Welcome to Moments with Marianne. This is your host, Marianne Pastana. And we're here today with special guest, Emily Francis, who's here to share with us her new book, The Taste of Joy, Mediterranean Wisdom for a Life Worth Savoring. So just imagine you have this great opportunity to move with your family to the island of Malta in the Mediterranean. It's just this beautiful island. But at the same time, it's during the 2020 pandemic and the world starts to shut down. This would be a difficult adventure for many people. And Emily's here today to share with us just her journey. Now, Emily Francis, she's been on the show before. She has a BS in exercise science and wellness with a minor in nutrition and a master's degree in human performance. Since moving to the Mediterranean, she's been a regular writer for a column in the local tourism magazine, Oh My Malta, and her column is entitled Emily in Malta, where she interviews local farmers, fishermen, and chefs about the way foods are grown, harvested, caught, and prepared on the island. She also reviews restaurants for a collaborative column titled A Chef and a Foodie on Tour, and she works as a contributing writer for Malta's Gourmet Today magazine. So welcome to the show, Emily Francis.
Thank you, Marianne. It's always such a pleasure.
Oh, I always love when we get to spend time together, and I'm so excited we get to talk more about the taste of joy. I know last time we left off when we were talking about how you're on a GMO-free island.
Malta was the first in the EU to ban GMOs. So GMOs, for anybody who's new to that concept, is genetically modified organisms, and it occurs in certain sprays and pesticides that are very toxic. And in the United States, we use it on everything. And here in Malta, they are banned and illegal. So anything that's grown on Maltese soil cannot use things like glyphosate, which is the number one super toxic, where a lot of people think they have gluten sensitivities, but they're not celiac. It's usually because of those sprays. And so living over here, we don't have those concerns. But if something's imported, it's sort of like all bets are off. But if it's grown locally here, it does not contain those chemicals.
How nice to be in a place where that is not a consideration. Because I mean, so many of us nowadays, especially here in the States, are having to look at labels and really pay attention to how our food is being sourced.
What you can really tell is because the level of autoimmune diseases are so high in the United States, and they are not so high in places like the Mediterranean, where the soil is very healthy and the foods are harvested very differently. And I'll tell you what I mean by that, because I found this fascinating. When I moved here, what I noticed in my own yard, because I have orange trees and tangerine trees, lemon trees, I have olive oil trees and pomegranates and carob. But what I found was that hanging off of my trees were these yellow, sticky little papers, basically, that hang off the branches. And what it does is it catches the bugs. So instead of spraying all this poison, they just have these sticky traps. But then what I noticed is it's all over the island. It's not just in my sweet little garden, it's everywhere. And they grow food. They have walls on the highways. There's not really a lot of highways, so I use that term loosely. But on the big roads with a lot of wall space, they actually plant vegetation where people can come and eat freely. So they'll do a lot of lettuce and a lot of greens, and it'll be growing up the walls for people. And even like there's 359 churches between Malta and Gozo, and these churches are like the Vatican. They are massive and unbelievable. And what a lot of the churches have for their people, for anyone open to the public, is several different trees, fruit trees that people can eat from. So almond trees, plums, different berries. It's really incredible growing all over the island. And you see these yellow sticky tapes everywhere. And then I learned from the farmers that they use an old French way of making a non-toxic chemical to spray for the bugs or for whatever needs to be done. And it's copper and like lemon sulfate. Like it's an interesting little, very easy mixture that does the same thing as the really toxic stuff that we tend to use in the United States because we make so much money from those companies. It's such a travesty, honestly, and it was one of the main reasons I wanted to live in a country that was GMO free.
Well, you picked a good one to start with. It sounds like you're in your perfect little paradise there. And it's interesting. I mean, you hear about how, Mediterranean living revolves around certain tenets. And I'd love for you to explain that for us.
I think there are three major tenets to Mediterranean living, and that is faith, that is family, and that is food. The faith here is high. It's very, very important to everyone. However, it's very personal and very private. Nobody asks if you attended church or what you believe, any of that stuff. People believe what they believe. They have a very strong faith and they go forward with it, but they are not here to convert people or guilt people or shame people. It's a very independent faithful path. And it is a 98% Catholic country. So Malta is a theocracy, not a democracy. But the approach to religion is very, very different. It doesn't have the guilt part and doesn't have the curiosity. Nobody's asked me anything. And it's interesting that way too, because the churches are technically slated by your zip code. So nobody's saying, have you found a church yet? Let me take you to church. Let me do this. None of that stuff happens here. It's okay. You live here. If you want to go to church, this is your neighborhood church. If you want to go someplace else, go someplace else. Everybody here they say, as you wish. And then family's everything here because you're living in a country that's multi-generational families, usually in the same home. So you have children and then their parents and then their grandparents all in the same home. And the way that it's sort of worked over the last hundreds of years is they build a house like a one-story house. And then when their children grow up and get married, they build a second story. And then when they grow up in the next level, they have a third story. So the houses have grown with the families, which is very, very neat. But family isn't just to the people you are born and raised with. Family is your friends. So if you make close friends over here, they take you in as family. I've spent the last 2 Christmases at my landlord's house with all of her family because they've taken us in like we're one of their own. And the friendships here, the relationships here, they're strong. You live in a small island. If somebody needs you, you can be there in 10 minutes. So the relationships, the aspects of how we treat our friendships is we put a lot of priority on it. So that's the family aspect. And then the food. The food is the glue that holds it all together. Any celebration, any excuse to celebrate. They have over 60 festas in the summer between Malta and Gozo. So you're seeing these parades and these bands playing from morning till night and throwing confetti, and they're carrying the saints through the towns and then like eating all day long. And it's festivities. And it's not just for the saints. My mom cannot believe how many days we get off during the school year because there are so many holidays and saints days and feast days and special days. And we don't go to school for as many days as the American school system. And even here, like businesses, you get 6 weeks of vacation, not 2 weeks of vacation. That the traveling here is very important. But the faith, family, and food. And the food, when you are at these festivals, you're seeing baskets with fresh bread. Fresh bread is one of the most important things on this island. They make them here fresh in the bakeries, and they believe that everybody should have access to really good bread. So the government subsidizes the breads all over the island so that you don't pay more than €1 for a loaf of really nice bread. And even the bread, the bakery food trucks will drive up and you'll have your couple of coins and get your buns and your mountain bread or whatever it is. It's really special. So those to me, and the olive oil is huge here, of course. So bread and olive oil and wine tend to be on every table. And people just really, they celebrate life. They really celebrate every aspect that a human could possibly celebrate. And if you will permit me, I will share another story about what I mean celebrating life.
Of course.
So I think we talked about this with the last show that I write a regular column here for the tourism magazine, and I interview local fishermen, farmers, and chefs about the way that foods are grown and prepared and harvested on the island. And the very first interview I ever did was on a potato farm for a farmer who grows potatoes for Air Malta. And I didn't understand at the time because I'm new and I've never lived in an island, but I had actually called him and gave him less than 24 hours between my calling him and booking the interview to come with a video camera people. And I wanted to see them dig the potatoes out of the fields. And what happened is we went to his home and his home field, and they had just harvested all the potatoes the day before. So when I got there, they had all these long tables right next to the fields, and they have this wood fire oven made from the stones. And he said, "Oh, we just had our family celebration to celebrate the harvest last night. That's why all the tables are still out." So his children, his grandchildren, his aunts, his uncles, his cousins, only family, they all come and they pick the last potatoes in the field, and then they put them in the oven with meat. And then they have the table with bread and the wine, which they grow the grapes, and olive oil, which they grow the olives, and they have this celebration. But here's where it gets better to me. This is what it means to celebrate the harvest. In Malta, because there's such an issue with wind, many of the farmers own several lots of farming, not all in the same one location because of the wind. So I didn't understand. I thought he was taking us to a second location, meaning like one of his friends, but it was actually his. It's the same farm, but in a second location. And that location had not yet been harvested. So we left his home location and went, I don't know, 0.25 miles down the road to another farm where you could see some of the baskets had some potatoes and then tons of rows yet to be harvested. And so we actually dug the potatoes out of the ground, which was so fascinating. But think about this. He had all those tables out. They had a huge family celebration for the one field. Yet not all the fields had been harvested the way that we tend to put things off. So in my mindset, I wouldn't celebrate until all of my fields had been harvested. But they don't do it that way, because to them, that's a signal to God that they are giving thanks for a great celebration and a harvest and asking for more and asking for more blessings. So they do a celebration signaling the end of every farm location. I think that's amazing.
I think that is too. And it kind of brings in this, and they're probably doing it without labeling it, but a real mindful way to cultivating the land.
It is. And one of the questions I asked him, and it was funny because he got embarrassed when I asked, but I really just wanted to know because they're the old generational farmers. His family has been farming these fields for over 100 years. So I asked him, "Do you plant according to the moon cycles?" And he said, "Oh, all the farmers have certain beliefs on that. And yes, we all follow something, but I don't want to say what it is because I don't want people to think I'm kooky." But it's really sad because you're not kooky. That's very real. It's just that we've gotten really lost in translation through the years of what's sacred and what's passed down through the family generations and what that means. But here, that stuff isn't lost. It's just not camera worthy, is really what it comes down to.
While you were spending time with him, is there kind of a faith aspect to farming that you're talking about, that connection
Yes.
where he's connected to the old, but maybe not really wanting to talk about it?
Exactly. Yes. There's a huge faith connection in every farmer that I've met. And what they do is, it kind of reminds me of like the Native Americans, how they would do like a rain dance or ask Great Spirit to bless them with abundance. That's a lot of what's going on here. So a lot of these farmers will pray for each other and they come together as a group and they help offset and they talk about it openly. And they really come together as a community in a way that unless you're unless you live in a place like this, to be honest, we don't see that in action anymore. At least I haven't ever seen anything like.
In your book, you talk about timing, and I'd love for you to expand on that because I think it really relates to what we're discussing.
I think timing is everything. And I never used to live by those laws the way that I understand them as an adult, not just from living here, but as an adult. And one of the stories that I give in the book is I was in high school when this person said this to me, but there was a family that I used to babysit for. And I remember the mother saying to me, it's everything comes down to timing. That when you're in a relationship, she said, 10% is attraction and 90% is timing. And at the time, I thought, this woman is crazy. It's 90% attraction and 10% timing. There was nothing about that to me that made sense. And now I really understand that timing really is everything. if you plant something not in the right time, it is not going to grow. That is in the fields and that is in life. And how many people, how many businesses, let's go there, have had an incredible idea, but they did it too early. They were ahead of their time, or they did it too late and somebody already got it. Everything comes down to timing. If we would have moved here, originally we were planning on moving here a year before, but we broke the contract because of some political issues. And then they replaced the prime minister and a lot of things happened. Had we moved here the first time around, I wouldn't live where I live. I wouldn't have the friends that I have. Everything would look different in my entire life had we done it at any other time. And to move here during COVID, when the world is locking down, that's a nutty time to pick up and leave the country and try a new life. But honestly, that particular time and space blessed us. It blessed our home. It allowed my children to be accepted into a school that I don't think they would have been able to be accepted in at any other time in history, honestly, because the wait list was so long. And then because of COVID, so many people were dispersed and so many people went back to their other countries, and we got a spot that I just don't think would have been available. So timing to me comes into the harvest. I have to know what months the gardener should come and plant what trees. If you are not in the right timing, you are not going to expand and grow the way that you could if you were planted at another time. And I think about this. I have a very dear friend who met her husband because she ran back into the grocery store for a Father's Day card. And he was in the aisle shopping for a Father's Day card. And they met and fell in love, and they are together to this day, the love of each other's lives. That's a timing. But that's not just timing. That's not a standard basic time. That's divine timing. So I do believe that basic time is about setting alarms, showing up on time, having a schedule. But divine timing is things like running back into the grocery store and meeting your love, being late and thinking, oh no, I'm late, only to show up and find out that you just missed an accident. Those are divine timing principles. And I believe now more than ever in the world that I try really hard to respect the timing of the universe more than my wanting to direct it and then miss the right flow.
So, what does the flow of the island look like?
The flow of the island is very unique because the more I live here and the more that I explore, I believe that different parts of the island go with different flows, different speeds, different energies, different waves of intention that are there. And where I live, I consider where I live Beverly Hills, Malta. So the flow is very cool, very chill. And the sea is all around you. So people tend to okay, I'll give a funny example, but in gymnastics, if you ever watch, let's say the Olympics, and you watch a gymnast on the balance beam, even though they don't have music to their routine, they will move to the music of whoever's on the floor. So whatever music is being played, their speed, their tempo will change. That's how it is here with the sea. So on the days that the sea is choppy, the whole flow is different. The entire island feels that people act differently. Everything changes. When the sea is calm like glass, you can feel it. You can feel it in the speed that people walk, the way that people treat each other, the moments of reflection. So it's that kind of setting. And I am on a tiny island that is all the way surrounded by the sea. So almost every road here leads to the sea. So you see it. And it's interesting because in every area, it looks totally different. So where you are, it sets. So it's a time and space thing.
In your book, you share a lot about community. And I'd love for you to kind of dive into that for us, just what community living looks like in Malta.
Malta is incredibly overpopulated, really, really crowded. And so you see flats on top of each other. So people are really close. And I mean, I really mean that. So you have your neighbors that are right there. So if you need something, you really are there. If I need an egg, I know exactly who to pick up the phone and call instead of me thinking, oh my gosh, I got to get out. I got to get to the store. I got to do this. They're right there. If something, and there's a city here called the Three Cities, and it's one of the oldest parts of the island. And it really is a home to the locals. You don't really have a lot of foreign people living in the Three Cities because everybody speaks Maltese. But one of the people that is born and raised in the Three Cities was telling me a story that when he was growing up, all the neighbors would make a different part of a meal, and they'd all come sit outside their door and put it all together, and everyone would eat a big meal, not for celebrations, for your everyday pleasure. That that's community. That's community living right there in a nutshell. I mean, how much better is that to know that you are supported? I moved here without my family. I mean, I moved here with my husband and my children. So, yes, my family, but I've never left my mom and my sister and my brother for any real length of time. And here I live in a country across the world, and yet I feel incredibly supported, really supported. I am not alone over here. And if I need something, I have a lot of people to call and ask for help. That's community that I've not ever had except for my family. So that's also taken a little bit of vulnerability on my part to expand and be open to that and let other people come in and help. I mean, it's been nice to have some of my friends on my children's pickup list at school, and they have me on their list so that if we get in a bind, we can call each other and say, can you do it? Can you grab all the kids? I'll pick them up, meet me at home, do this. It's just really a spectacular living arrangement. And the other thing is that I talk about in the book is there's a thing called the rat park experiment that talks about different rats. A certain doctor, he gave the rats in a cage one bowl of clean drinking water and one bowl of water laced with drugs. The rats that were alone in the cages ultimately became addicted to the drugs and died. Then he changed it up and he thought, okay, well, what if they had stimulation? What if I still keep these same two bowls of water, clean drinking water, or laced with laced with drugs? Would the rat still become a drug addict and die if we put him around other rats and put in some toys? Stimulation, community. None of the rats became drug addicted and none of the rats died, even though some of the rats still drank some of the drug laced water. They never became addicted and died. Then he went one step further and took already drug addicted rats that were living alone in the cage and put them in with the group of rats, same two bowls. And guess what? None of them continued to be drug addicted and none of them died. There is so much research, not just because of this rat park experiment, but that's the one I use for the book. But there's a lot of research about the gains and losses of our overall health and longevity based on the community that we keep. So people that are addicted, we always encourage them to move away from the group that keeps you down. And then imagine if you're around a group that lifts you up. So community isn't just because you're surrounded by people. It's because you're surrounded by people of your choosing that bring you up to a different level of existence. And that's what I feel like I'm living in now and how I can understand and appreciate community-based way of living in a way that I never understood before.
Do you feel that it's really impacted your mental, emotional, and physical health and that of your family?
All of the above. I do. And I remember when we first moved here and we weren't driving yet, so we took cabs everywhere. And there was this British driver one day, and he lived in Great Britain all his life. He was a bus driver. And then a little more than 20 years ago, he moved to Malta. And he still drives the vans or the buses or whatever. And he said, I know without a doubt that I've tacked on at least 10 years longer to my life because I live here, because of my mindset, because I'm so happy. And this was when we had just moved here. And I thought, oh my gosh, we could be so lucky. But now that I live here, I do approach almost every situation a little bit more methodically, a little bit more intentionally, a little bit more slow. And it does change the way that I view my internal health, my external health. It is different. So I do think that I think living here, I think that's why you see so many elderly people here and in places like Italy. I think in the Mediterranean, it's not just the warm weather, which I do think helps, but I think the family, community lifestyle, all the family, the healthy living, you're not eating toxic, poisonous food at every turn. You see so many elderly people here, especially elderly men. They actually have a slightly longer range of life than the women here. And both are more than 10 years longer than the USA standards on quality and quantity of living. That's crazy, right?
That's just remarkable to hear that. It gets, I mean, here in the States, we think that we have it dialed down on how to really take care of ourselves and invest in our self-care. And it sounds like we're not quite there yet.
One of the things I've really started to pick up, and I've thought about how to really explain this, but self-care has become a buzzword in my life now because they don't use that over here. It's not part of we got to teach you guys how to slow down. We need to teach you how to take time out for yourselves. That does not work over here because even those overtired, burned out moms that work and do other things, the thing that I've noticed over here is, as a general rule, people do not overextend and overcommit themselves. Self-care is a way of life. It is not a buzzword. It is not overextending yourself to the point that you have to figure out how to come back from the abyss that you are living in. That, to me, that is self-care in a totally different context.
Well, and it seems that there is just, besides the fact that it's not talked about, just something that happens, there's this pace, and we were talking about flow earlier,
Mhm.
that the island has, and self-care seems just to be part of that.
It is. People are honestly, my children, I really started watching this from young because the young children here, especially the local Maltese children, really stick up for themselves. They're it would seem aggressive, but it's more assertive. And what I had started to do with my kids was, girls, watch. That's what we need to start doing. We all need to learn how to say no with ease. We need to be more comfortable putting up boundaries and saying, I don't want to do that. And that's how people here really do it. They don't get talked into things that they don't want to do. If they don't want to do it, they don't want to do it. And then other people just leave them alone. And that's the other thing. I talk about this in the book because people are not all up in your business unless you invite them. Like, really, people are very comfortable worrying about themselves in every avenue of expression that means. And they are not gossiping and asking all about you or trying to turn you into something else or guilt you, and they're not talking about you behind your back. People don't have time for that over here. It's very fascinating to me because it does feel like the priorities are on a little bit straighter, and I didn't realize that mine were crooked before I got here.
It sounds like it must have been like a culture shock in some ways, arriving there.
Yes, it was
Between the
actually.
food and the people and the community. It just sounds like, whoa, okay. Now I'm in
It
this.
was.
Yeah.
Honestly, not only culture shock, but you're saying it with the food too, because it's true. Because in America, we color all the food, so everything's super bright. We season all the foods with a bunch of red dyes, red dye 40, things that are totally illegal over here. By the way, pharmaceutical commercials are illegal in Malta. You don't see any pharmaceutical commercials. And when you go to the doctors here, they only prescribe medicine if they have to. And if they really need you to take like an antibiotic, they'll prescribe a probiotic with it as a prescription strength. Now, here's the other part. All my life, I was taught that socialized medicine was somehow not as good as what we had. And now that I live in a country where we have socialized medicine, I have to say, I wholeheartedly disagree. It is incredible to be able to go to the doctor at any time and be covered, and go get a surgery and it be covered, or have a huge accident happen and not be terrified that you're going to lose your home, that you can go through really serious illness. I have a friend in the United States right now going through cancer, and he's very close to losing his home. They're resorting to GoFundMe. That's heartbreaking because then you can't really even focus on your recovery because you're terrified that you're not going to have a place to return to when you come out of the hospital. I now live in a country where that part is completely not a conversation. It's covered. If you are a resident here, you can go to the major hospital and everything is free. Everything. And even let's put it this way. And then they have private hospital too. So you're allowed to have your private health care and it be upper echelon, but you are also entitled to free health care. Every person here on this island that has a residence card or a citizenship has access to free health care. Free. No strings attached. And even my mother came here to visit, and 2 days after she arrived, she had kidney stones. And we had to go to the hospital, and it was during COVID, so I couldn't even stay with her. And they made her stay for 2 days and one night They did 2 CT scans. They did blood work. They did so many things, and she didn't have traveler's insurance, and she didn't have a residence here. So I was convinced we were going to pay at least 10,000. The entire thing was 1,000 euros. 1,000.
That's amazing. And I'm sorry your mom went through that whole experience.
It was
But you,
terrible, but it was
yeah.
eye-opening. It was, I mean, how you don't know it. And I'd never been to the hospital until she had that situation. So my friends, my really close friends are both doctors over there, dental doctors and oral surgeons. And they came, they were so sweet to us because it was really cold in the emergency room. And my friend's husband came with his sports coat from his office so that we would have more clothes. And then I said to him and his wife, like, I don't think we can afford this. I don't know what we're going to do. And she kept saying, I don't think you understand healthcare over here. I don't think it's going to be anything like you're expecting. I know what you're thinking. We used to live in America because they studied at Harvard. So they lived in Boston. And she's like, we lived there. We understand, but it is nothing like that. Please don't worry. Please just trust that this is all going to be okay. And it was, when we got that bill for 1,000, my husband was like, quick, put the credit card down, pay it, and get out of there. Because it was like, it felt like it was too good to be true. It was like, catch me in the parking lot. Oh, I'm
Before they change their minds, right?
Yes. Yes. And we have other coworkers that are United States citizens and live here with us. And he's scheduled for surgery on Friday. And in my mind, I was like, oh, I'm surprised he didn't do it when he was home over the holidays in America. And then the other part of me was like, oh, of course he waited till he could come here and he not have to pay for years on end on the back end for whatever the surgery is. That is, I mean, the people are taken care of here and they have less stress that way, because I do think that one of the biggest stressors in the United States is healthcare, is access to medication. And part of those reasons that we need medication is because our food isn't healthy. I mean, it's all just one big circle of greed and lack of education and awareness, that we walk around and we don't know better because we are listening to all the people that own stock saying, no, this is the best.
Well, in your book, I mean, the subtitle is Mediterranean Wisdom for a Life Worth Savoring. Do you have a couple tips that we could use here in the US to have that life worth savoring?
For one, take a step back, like really take a step back, because I feel like we're so busy all the time in the United States. And not only are we so busy, but we have a ridiculous amount of stimulation around us at every turn in the United States. I shopped on Amazon every day because I could not wait to get a package every day. Like something I loved coming home to anything, the silliest items. I loved the deliveries. They don't have Amazon here. That threw me for a loop. They don't have Target. They don't have Walmart. They don't have box stores. I didn't even know where I was going to buy school supplies because they don't have what I'm used to. Taking that step back, though, what I find really often is now when I shop, I stop and I think, do I really need this before I purchase it? Whereas it used to just be like more, 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 more. Like I watched American TV. I still watch my American TV. I still watch my same old local news channel. I still know what's going on in my mom's neighborhood. But I watched 3 commercials back to back, and all 3 keywords were more. This year, we're going to do more. We're going to have bigger. But sometimes that is what is the downfall. So the Mediterranean wisdom that I start with is smaller, more poignant. What matters the most? And then focus on those things and stop being distracted by so many things that are really not as important. And they are not helping you get to where you want to be. So that's my big, is take a step back and kind of let the focus become a little bit tighter and smaller. 2 is enjoy your food more and try to eat with people. And if you do eat alone, try to eat something that makes you slow it down. So like really good olive oil and bread, you tend not to scarf down because it tastes so good, because it tastes so pure. So even a piece of bread and olive oil changes how I sit down and take in food. Awareness, being more conscious of what is happening around me and within me. And then faith, that is a very personal place to be, but I really hope that people strengthen their part in it, whatever that means. But don't take it out and try to get everybody to follow you. Just like really focus on you. And that is something that I find here very much. They say the words, are you good people? Then that's all we need to know. The rest will sort itself out. And they say those kinds of words that it'll sort itself out, or they'll say, as you wish, often, because they're not attached to whatever it is you're doing. And I love that. I do think those are wisdom from the Mediterranean. It is really to be, as a key word, mindful. But I do think that mindful living is deeper than what I understood it to be in the past.
Well, I love that because it's really not involving ourselves in what other people are doing, just being responsible for how we act and our actions.
I think it changes. It's interesting because it's not that we're less interested in people around here, but we really show up when they meet us. And then the other parts, we focus on our own. And it somehow strengthens the community based way of living. It's like it allows the relationships to be cleaner.
We are accepting people as they are, as opposed to getting involved in any kind of backstory or gossip or what could be.
And that's nice. And, I think a lot of locals might disagree with my assessment that you don't see as much gossip. But I think what I've also noticed is people don't tend to gossip near me because I refuse to be part of it. And that was the other thing is I started a new life. I could decide exactly what my dynamics in my relationships were going to be. And everything that I do here is to highlight and to focus on the things that I love and the people that I love and the people that make me happy to spend time with them. And some of those are my farmers and my fishermen. And I make time to jump down there, even though it's not that close. I go down a lot because I want to be around people that nourish me. They nourish my spirit to be near them. And they're the most simple people I've ever met. They do not get distracted. They really are faith, family, and food. That is it. So to spend time with those sorts of people that really have zero time or effort or tolerance for anything that's negative or mean-spirited, they're not having it. And being around those kind of people makes me a better person. Because now I realize if I am around some sort of gossip or things, I really sort of shut it down because it is very important to me that everybody knows by my actions that I've got their back when they're not looking.
So, how would you say that your faith or spirituality has changed by being on the island?
Oh, it's become my own. It's really a big deal because when I lived in the South, I feel like I sort of tried to conform towards religion for the sake of my children towards the end there. And it felt like a lot of pressure because I was never that person. I've always been a much more spiritual person as opposed to religious. But then I wanted to get my children into a certain program and it was religious based. And I really had to crawl into the box. And it was Catholic based. So I thought moving here, I would have to do that. And it turns out that it looks nothing like that. Nobody has any real intention for you to have to show up for church or not. It is really not their business. But what I do find, because there is so much church here and so much history, I go into every church that has open doors. But I don't do it at mass times. I just like to go in. I like to feel the energy. I like to look at the artwork. These churches, the floors are magnificent. The walls to the ceiling are unbelievable beauty. And you can almost feel the years and years of prayer over you in places like this and even on the whole island. And what I've noticed is there are certain miracle sites, a lot of miracle sites here, because some of these cities predate Christ himself. This is a very old country, steeped in tradition and religion and faith. But their faith is not so tight the way that I grew up. It makes me realize that even a Catholic faith is really like an evangelical Catholic from the States. And over here, people get their olive leaves blessed after Palm Sunday and they bring them home and waft them through the house to break curses. You don't hear that stuff in America. They would think that these people are witches, but these are like the ultimate religious people. They do a lot of extra things for blessing and for safekeeping that I love. I really love the ritual anyway. I love the ritual of the Catholic Church and I love the ritual beyond. And One of the things that I really love, there's a miracle site here. It's the Lady of the Grotto, and it is a statue of Mary holding Jesus in a place where supposedly, although I believe it, that Mary appeared to a hunter many, like way long time ago. And they built the statue in honor of that. And then in the 90s, the statue was one of three in the world that have been seen crying tears of human blood. And they brought in forensics, and it was human blood. And even the Pope came. I mean, it's a huge miracle site. But what I love is the way I feel when I go. And I find myself driving down to visit my lady. I call her my lady. I feel like she's my friend. And what I found is something really magnificent tends to happen every time I go. Some sort of really miracle, incredible situation changes after my visit with her. And so I tend to, my faith has become really, really strong, but also really private and without guilt or reservation. And that is the coolest place to be for me.
In your book, you talk about count your blessings and return them.
There is always things to be thankful for, and we know that. But to me, being aware. So let's start with what I just talked about with the Lady of the Grotto. I feel like I am blessed with every visit. So what can I do to return that? Sometimes it's leaving gifts there. Sometimes it's, well, I take care of the cats here. I always have cat food in my car because the cats of Malta are well taken care of by the locals. They're not put in shelters. They're not put down for space. They live here among the people. And most people, or at least the ones I know, keep food and they give it back. And even like in the island of Gozo, they have these, like, it looks like a vending machine, but it's a water machine for the cats and food machine. So if you are carrying a bottle of water and you can pour some in, it'll go to the cats. So to me, you're returning the blessings because you're sharing in whatever that energy is that is of a giving heart without expecting something in return. You're continuing that flow into someplace else that needs it.
It really seems that that is kind of a real underlying theme for Malta is that caring because they have food for people, they have food for animals. It seems that all the way around between the food, faith, and community, it is such a unique place.
It is, and I do believe that love thy neighbor exists as an action here. It's not a concept. It's real. It's really real. I mean, even this week, I went and reviewed a restaurant because that's one of the columns that I do. And I was riding home in a cab. They call it the Bolt. It's like an Uber. And because I don't like to drive into the city, you can't park there. And I'm in the back seat. And somehow the driver and I end up talking. And I say, I'm having a really hard time finding any more farmers to interview for my magazine article. And he says, oh, wait, right here. I'm going to make a phone call. This man, he's got a goat farm. And oh, when you try his cannoli with the goat cheese, oh, you end up eating thousands. I call him now. And he calls him and introduces us. And now, like, I'm going to go to his farm. And, we want him to be at our festival. Like, that's how people roll over here. Is like, I got a guy. I'm going to help you. You got to meet this guy. You got to do this. You got to try this. I got the best friend. I want you to meet them all. It's really fantastic.
In your book, you talk about celebrate everything. So what does that look like and how can we do that here?
Well, to me, the ultimate was that potato farm. Celebrate everything. Don't wait until the last potato in the last field is harvested before you celebrate. Celebrate because the first one was done. Then celebrate again and again and again, however many places you own. So take that into every part of your life. Celebrate the small things. And I talk about this into my own personal, as you know, I spent a lot of years in really severe anxiety and panic and kind of lost a pretty decent size of my life being in that dysfunctional space. It was like 7 years of real torture. And one of the things that was super hard for me was going to the grocery store. Everybody has something. Everybody has something that they don't share with other people because it makes them sound off kilter. And for me, it was grocery shopping caused me a tremendous amount of anxiety. And when I would leave the store with all the food that I meant to get, I would do a little happy dance in my head because I needed to celebrate that part because only I knew what that took. It didn't need to be a public thing. But it needed to be celebrated so that I could gain the strength to do it again and again and again. So celebrate everything to me starts very small, and it starts within. It starts in the deep pit seed in your body that not everybody gets to see, or maybe nobody gets to see. And when you face it and you let it grow just a little, celebrate. Celebrate that you're here. And I start in the book because to me, the ultimate place to begin, if you don't know where to start on celebrating, is simply your breathing. Celebrate your breath. Start there, because where there is breath, there is hope. And that's if as long as you're here with us, you have the possibilities and the options to make a shift. Whether that means you're going to up and leave and try something new, or whether that means you're going to expand and go to the grocery store when usually it causes you major angst. Like it's your own celebration to have, but it needs to be celebrated. It needs to be acknowledged, because that's how we build more of the good stuff.
What do you want readers and our listeners to take away from your book?
I'll start locally. What I really want for people here is to realize how very magnificent our local farmers and the farming community is, because I think most people don't ever get to meet them or see them or know what they do, but they are really the reason that our island runs the way that it does. I believe them to be the heart and soul of this island. So that is actually one of the biggest parts that I want people to get from this book, because in my mind, it's a bit of a love letter to them and to Malta and to life here and what it looks like. What I want other people to realize is that if you feel like you're stuck and you're really unhappy, it does not always have to be that way, but you are going to have to be willing to make a change. But I do believe that those changes are possible. And that's a big deal, because I wanted this for so long. I didn't know I wanted Malta. I didn't even really know Malta existed. I just knew that I wasn't in the right place, and I wasn't as happy as what I always hoped I could be. And I don't want to wish away time ever, because time is our most precious resource. So I think now a lot of people have been shaken up with the world and the way things have changed, and realized that there's not a lot of time left to lose and to miss, hoping and wishing for something else and not doing anything to take a step towards it. So if there's any message I really could give, it's that we all deserve to live happy, wild, and free, but you have to not only give yourself permission, but you need to make the steps to make it happen.
When you look back on the time that you've been in Malta, what would you say are some of the number one and two things that you've learned?
Oh, to love life. I feel like I've fallen deeply in love with just being alive. That's a huge one for me. Um, and to be really clear on what's the most important to me, and then not really worry about anything that isn't that.
So, Emily, can people create their own Malta wherever they're at?
I think people can create their own Malta-esque experience wherever they are, because it's joy. It's what is around you. So even if I'm a firm believer in feng shui, however you even design a room. So if I can give a quick example, in my massage practice, I was given a new room, and I had it really beautifully painted and I loved what was there. But then my friend, who's a feng shui consultant, said, may I rearrange? She didn't add anything to the room. She didn't take away anything from the room, but she reorganized, and it became the most fabulous room in the clinic. And everybody stopped to ask about it. You can create your own beautiful experience by rearranging what's at your table and how you're sitting with it in any capacity: food, life, love, relationships. It's all yours for the taking. Just rearrange and put things that are really important up front.
So, and how would they use the taste of joy to get there?
Well, I hope they use some of the recipes, because I do believe food can alter any experience in the now. You can feel amazing. So I do think taking some of the recipes that I put in there were such simple recipes that anyone can make any of them. So find one that kind of tickles your senses, that makes you curious, that you think, oh, I want to try this, and actually try it and see how it makes you feel in the body and in your mind.
Do some of the practices in the taste of joy also bring us to this place?
I do believe that some of the practices, certainly the detox bath, salt bath, is a wonderful practice at any time of the year, but especially at the change of seasons when your body needs a little bit of assistance in balancing and catching up. But there's also practices of asking yourself questions and going a little bit deeper into who you are and where you want to be, and do those match? Well, if you go to my website, mymaltalife.com, you can be connected to all my social media stuff, mymaltalife.com, and come visit me and send me an email. Let me know what you think and what you're hoping for in your life, because I really do. I want everybody to really be as happy as they can be in the life that they have. I do.
Well, Emily, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Thank you so much, Marianne. It means so much to be on your show.
Well, thank you, Emily. It's been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your new book, The Taste of Joy. Well, on that note, we're going to pause here for a quick moment, and we'll be right back after this message. I'd like to thank Jason Eastwood at Guitarfulness for sharing his inspiring music and talent with us. His music is known worldwide for cultivating atmospheres of harmony, inner peace, and clarity. Visit Jason's website at guitarfulness.com. Join his newsletter, be part of his community, and download his music. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne, where we make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.